Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Shared Awareness and Deconfliction in the Mediterranean Conference. The second part of the day will start with Panel 2 discussions. Questions and answers will be managed by Q&A manager, by panel moderator. If you have any questions to a specific topic or to a speaker, you may send an email using your email account to Q&A manager at polad1@euohq.defesa.it. So he's able to queue the questions before the questions and answers periods. Minister Dejaka, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for attending our ShadeMed Panel 2, which wants to focus the development of the blue economy of the Mediterranean as an inestimable possibility to solve many of the challenges and improve the livelihood of the Mediterranean communities. The promotion of the Union's model for the free circulation of people, goods, including resources, services, also information, and capitals to the whole Mediterranean basin that marks a liquid southern border of Europe and represents a fundamental global socio-economic crossroads. In 2020, the macroeconomic performance of some of the Mediterranean countries further deteriorated due to the global pandemic, triggering a new wave of inter-regional political, social, and economic conflicts. This is a brief introduction to the discussion of this very distinguished panel, where I will introduce one at a time the speakers, and I think the first that I would call to take the floor is currently Deputy Secretary General for Economic and Global Issue of the European External Action Service. And before that, he was Italian ambassador to Madrid, Italy's permanent representative to the European Union, and of course, before he had a very distinguished career within the Italian ministry, being diplomatic advisor to Prime Minister Romano Prodi, and so on and so forth. He held too many high positions to go in each and every one. It is therefore my pleasure, I understand he is online at the moment. Ambassador Sannino, if you are with us, as I think it is a pleasure to give you the floor. Please open your microphone, and you have about 15 minutes to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. First of all, I would like to start by saying that the Euro-Mediterranean relations have been traditionally marked by the geographic proximity, the interdependence, and the numerous interests and challenges that the two regions share. The Mediterranean basin accounts for only 1% of the world's oceans, yet generates 20% of the related economic value, and that makes it a fundamental global socioeconomic crossroad. Moreover, mobility and people-to-people contacts between the two shores of the Mediterranean have been traditionally always considerable. And yet, this is one of the least integrated regions in the world. Some of the biggest economic disparities among neighboring regions globally are noted between the two shores of the Mediterranean. Enough to say that the wealth generated by each member of the population in the south is 13 times lower than in the north. And all this before having a picture of the final impact of COVID that is already hitting very hard the economies of the Mediterranean. The major socioeconomic shock caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the numerous pre-existing political, social, economic, and institutional vulnerabilities. Fragile economies were further weakened, political and social tensions were intensified, and socioeconomic reforms have become even more necessary than before. The EU has demonstrated rapidly its solidarity and has put together a short-term collective response to the crisis, bringing together the EU institutions and the member states under the Team Europe label, which managed to mobilize emergency support for over 2.2 billion euro, focusing on health, economic, and social sectors. It is true that this is not fresh money. It is an adjusting of the ongoing assistance programs that were already there, but it has shown the capacity to react quickly to the needs. And it's worth recalling that the southern Mediterranean is a region where the European Union has consistently invested both politically and financially over the last 10 years. EU cooperation with the southern Mediterranean covers a wide range of sectors, bilateral and regional, cross-border, under the overall framework of the European Neighbourhood Policy. With the considerable support of the European Neighbourhood Instrument, which has mobilized almost 8 billion euros for the period from 2014 to 2020. The challenge that we have now in front of us, going to back to the COVID, to the impact that this has had, is how to help the country to recover from this crisis and from the difficult situation that is going through. And how we can, using the expression of the Secretary General of the UN, build back better, or maybe even better, building forward better. From that perspective, a green recovery is a very sine qua non condition in order to achieve this objective. We cannot be the opportunity to link strongly the economy recovery from the impact of the pandemic to the effort in fighting the global warming emergency. And even more so because a more sustainable blue economy is a more resilient economy. Climate change and environmental degradation have become global emergency, especially in the Mediterranean region. In a business as usual model, the Mediterranean region will be 2.2 degrees warmer by 2040. And such negative trend will be acting as a threat multiplier, protracting political, social, and economic and security challenges. That's why implementing the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement remain crucial to be better equipped for future economic shocks. And it is to be said that there is no trade-off between economic growth and environment. On the contrary, to build resilience and to create growth and jobs while mitigating impacts and adapting to climate change means attracting investment that can be mobilized in key green sectors: renewable energy, low carbon transition, electrification, or green hydrogen. Taking into account the geographic proximity and the interdependence between the two shores, as the EU is the region's first economic and trade partner, we have a joint interest to further strengthen our economic cooperation based on the lessons learned from the pandemic. And I want to underscore the importance of diversified, shorter value chains in view of a sustainable economic recovery, as well as the importance of the cooperation in the field of health, innovation, and research in view of improving the livelihood of our citizens. This is the reason why it is important to continue on the path of the necessary political and socio-economic reforms in creating the right conditions for greater investments in the region, starting with good governance and rule of laws. It goes without saying that our policies need to be planned and centered around the heart and future of the region, and I'm speaking about the youth, and need to address the major challenge of unemployment. Speaking about the Mediterranean brings us to speak also about migration. Migration is another global challenge, which is closely linked to the underlying socioeconomic conditions. Well-managed migration and mobility of people could offer substantial benefits for all, for countries of destination, transit, and origin, as well as for migrants themselves. Harnessing and maximizing these benefits forms part of the EU comprehensive approach to migration. On the 23rd of September, the Commission has proposed a new pact on migration and asylum, which is really based on the concept of managed migration. Discussion among the member states have started, and they are difficult, and there is still a lot of work to do in order to reach a shared vision and a shared course of action. I don't want to go into the details of these negotiations, but I want to stress that it is key to keep this dimension in mind, and it is key to believe and work in order to have a positive impact of migration on both sides of the Mediterranean. Finally, our region cannot prosper without stability, security, peace, and good neighborly relations. Improving and delivering on security is a prerequisite for achieving long-lasting resilience of the states and of the societies. To this end, the European Union follows a comprehensive approach which focuses on conflict prevention, counter-terrorism, fight against radicalization, and security sector reform. The HRVB has referred in his message in detail to the EU work in the region, the support to the UN efforts, notably in Libya, and making effective use of EU instruments in an integrated way. I would like to conclude by stressing the importance of the regional cooperation. A wide reflection on how to renew our partnership with the southern neighbors started last May, and it is ongoing. And we are preparing a joint communication on the renewed partnership with the southern neighborhood that should be approved at the beginning of 2021. As we speak, a ministerial meeting is taking place between the EU and our southern partners in Barcelona. This meeting is organized back-to-back with the 5th Annual Regional Forum of the Union of the Mediterranean, which is gathering in Barcelona also the ministers of foreign affairs of the 42 countries of the Union for the Mediterranean, on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona process. Among the objectives of the declaration, which is under negotiation, there is a commitment to a sustainable blue economy, with particular focus on the fields of marine and maritime governance, the fight against pollution, and the protection of biodiversity. The Union for the Mediterranean has been working on this for quite some time already, and the second ministerial on blue economy of the Union of the Mediterranean is planned in Malta on the 2nd of February 2021. This is certainly a very challenging time, but it's also a time of opportunities, and we need to seize the momentum to transform the COVID-19 pandemic into an opportunity to create a new social, economic, and political environment in the Mediterranean. This is what we are aiming to, and this is the effort on which we need to focus our strength. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sannino. Thank you, grazie Stefano. I think this is extremely useful as a general geopolitical and geoeconomic introduction to the topic that we decided to focus in this panel. I'm trying to propose a kind of a step-by-step descent into the depth of the geoeconomic issues of the Mediterranean. So this is a general diplomatic introduction from the higher echelons of the European External Action Service. Now I would turn to a more specifically maritime and legal introduction, which will be provided by Rear Admiral Fabio Caffio, who has been for many years a specialist within the Italian Navy, within the legal branch of the Navy. And so he will be able to provide us with a quite overarching picture of what is the situation today. I think he will also very usefully resort to some slides describing his speech. And so, Admiral, if you can hear us, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Ambassador, and thanks for inviting me. So, I have prepared the presentation, and I ask to present it. By the way, in the meantime, so the Mediterranean Sea is an international trade hub. But we have considered that pandemic crisis does not seem to have had a deep impact on the Mediterranean in terms of a ship passing through it. Over. Please, over. Go. No Mediterranean port has never been closed, even if quarantine measures have been adopted for cruise passengers, or migrants. And finally, the Mediterranean, despite covering less than 1% of the world's ocean surface, accounts for around 15% of the global maritime traffic. Over. In these slides, you can see the density of the maritime traffic in the Mediterranean Sea. You can see the central Mediterranean and the Strait of Otranto, the Gibraltar Straits, and also the Aegean Sea, where the traffic is more and more dense. So, over. So, concerning the status of the Mediterranean Sea, we can say that it is an international waterway. As a matter of fact, the Mediterranean is an unicum to be seen in relation with the adjacent basin through its international sea lanes of communication, the Gibraltar Straits and the Suez Canal. So the applicable geopolitical concept is the well-known wider Mediterranean. But by a maritime point of view, we can consider the Mediterranean an international waterways or a transit sea. So about the legal trend, we have to consider that is underway a sort of territorialization of the Ig Sea. So the space of Ig Sea are reducing more and more due to national proclamation of EZZ. Over. So we can see in this map on the left the geographical situation under which there is no distance of 400 miles between opposite coasts, the costs that means that each state have to enter in negotiation with other one, since no unilateral delimitation are allowed. And on the right side, there is a map concerning the EZZ claimed by many states and overlapping due to the fact that there is no space for unilateral declaration. We can see the Algerian one, the Spanish one, the French one, and the Italian environmental protection zones that overlap each other in many zones. Over. So, concerning freedom of navigation, the international balance of the Mediterranean is based upon the freedom of navigation principle. Maintaining the freedom of navigation is an historic task of our navies in time of peace. So, but the unimpeded use of the sea lane of communication requires navies to ensure the legality of the maritime domain. Let me say that warships are state organs entitled under a United Nations Convention of Law of the Sea to policing the high sea in peacetime. And I would quote Admiral Mann, the famous strategist, under which navies, especially in time of violent peace, are a factor of utmost importance in international affairs, one more often deterrent than irritant. So the role of navies is to facilitate the peace in the maritime domain. But finally, we have to consider that the freedom of navigation applies also in the EZZ, not only on the high sea. This is very important since the Mediterranean Sea, as I said before, is under territorialization. So this not will change the legal status in the Mediterranean, since the freedom of navigation will continue to be applied over. So a pillar of the stability of the Mediterranean Sea is the European Union Maritime Security Strategy, approved in 2014. Key points of the security strategy are non-military functions carried out by navies in preserving the freedom of navigation and fighting illicit activities. Delimitation of maritime zones such as EZZ, which present a potential for growth and jobs, need to be carried out in order to create a secure environment, since without any delimitation, certain of the maritime space, there is a situation of uncertainty. So another point very important is that peaceful settlement of maritime disputes is, in accordance with international law, is only the way that all countries have to follow. And finally, strengthening security of the maritime domain is a responsibility of the Union by many policies, including the CSDP. So the role of the European Union in the Mediterranean is this one, to maintain the stability of all the basin through this policy. Over. So our operation Irini is an operation focused on security and stabilization aspects. So the key points are the main point is implementing the UN arms embargo of the coast of Libya in full support of the international peace process, aimed to maintain the independence and integrity of Libya. This implies strict impartiality towards the warring parts in Libya, and is what Irini assured. So, concerning the coercive inspections of vessels on the High Sea suspected to be engaged in violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions 2002-9092, the modus operandi is that one established in the same resolution, based on flag state consent, provided that the intervening state made good faith efforts to first seek the consent of the vessel's flag states prior to any inspections. So let me say that the 4 hours time limit period is a formula based on a practice adopted on the base of London Protocol 2005, and is aimed to respect the national jurisdictions. So about these aspects, I have to remember that the same resolutions, the para 3 of the same resolution, provides for 2 main aspects. So the intervening states have to make, to respect good faith efforts to first obtain the consents of the vessel flag state. And secondly, the flag state have to cooperate with such inspection. So we have not to forget that United Nations Security Council resolution are obliged all the member states of the United Nations, and by another point of view, all the member states have to cooperate each other in order to facilitate the task assigned to the intervening states under the authority of Security Council. So, over. So let me conclude. The free flow of maritime trade in the Mediterranean Sea requires a secure environment. Protecting the legality of the maritime domain is the main task of the mission performed in disrupting arms, oil, and migrants smuggling by Operation EUNAVFOR Med Irini, in accordance with the principles and values of the European Union, in the interest of both the international community and the Libyan people. Okay, many thanks for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. Even more thanks, because usually the one in charge of keeping the times tends to have to warn participants that they are over their time, and the first 2 speakers have been quite short in their intervention, so they are gentlemanly allowing for more time to the questions. Now we turn to the heart of the economic activities in the Mediterranean Sea, and we have the pleasure of having with us Martin Dosman, who is at the moment the Secretary General of the European Community Ship Owners Association, and he has himself a long and distinguished career in this sector through the Royal Association of the Netherlands Ship Owners first, where he was managing director, and many other positions in the same field. So before giving the floor to the Italian Association of Ship Owners, I think it is quite appropriate to give the floor to the representative of the European Ship Owners Association, with which Irini has and continues to have very good exchanges and relations, specifically on the cost of security, as it was certainly touched upon. So, Mr. Dorsman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for having me in this meeting, and good day to all. Shall I share my presentation myself? I can do that. One moment, please. There it is. Can you please confirm that it's visible for you?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. And then I can start. First, I would like to very briefly introduce EXA. EXA is the European umbrella organization. We are representing 20 national ship owners associations in the EU, the UK and Norway, founded back in 1965, and we try to promote and protect the interest of European shipping. We are, of course, based in Brussels, and we have a secretariat with 11 staff. If you look at the European ship owners industry, there's a lot of figures on this slide. Perhaps it's most relevant to look at the right hand corner on the top. You see that European ship owners represent almost 40% of the world fleet. And if we move down, right corner on the low, we add 149 billion euro to the European economy. And we are responsible for, in total, 2 million jobs. Of course, if I speak today about shipping, I'm not only referring to European shipping, but to the global shipping industry, because the Mediterranean is, of course, a global shipping lane. Transport by sea, it's a very crucial service for the world and the EU. Some figures here, 90% of the world trade is by sea. 76% of EU external trade is by sea, so that's a very important transport mode. And if we look at intra-EU transport, it's 32%. The biggest transport mode intra-EU is road transport, trucks, that's 50%, but number 2 is intra-EU, short sea shipping, we also call it. And we transport 190 million passengers by sea in Europe. And you see some nice pictures of the very diverse fleet from small short sea vessel in the middle, above to the big oil tankers, and of course the ferries, very important for the Mediterranean. You see a car carrier and you see an offshore service vessel. This is another slide showing you the importance of the Mediterranean. This is all the dots represent an actual vessel. So you see the huge concentration of vessels. The previous speakers already mentioned the percentages. I will not repeat them. We are a driving force for the blue economy, of course, but there are some crucial conditions for the shipping industry in order to remain and even strengthen our impact and our positive impact on the blue economy. I think it's fair to say that shipping is a stabilizing element. By providing maritime services, we invest in the blue economy. We make the economy stronger. And stability and security in the Mediterranean Sea is therefore key for the shipping industry to remain an integral part of the blue economy also in this region. And conversely, being able to operate safely is also a precondition for shipping to continue to generate value and therefore to play a stabilizing role in the Mediterranean geopolitical and economic ecosystem. Commercial shipping is, of course, affected by the migration crisis in the Mediterranean, if I turn to the aspects of the migration. And there are several elements that can contribute to ease the current situation. And we believe that investing in the blue economy is crucial to improve the stability of the Mediterranean regions and its communities. We therefore encourage the EU to promote its blue economy model and to share its best practices in its discussions with its North African and Sub-Saharan counterparts, to invest in infrastructure, resources and skills around the blue economy. This will contribute to the stabilization of the region and decrease the pull factor towards Europe. And I think this is particularly important in light of the COVID pandemic and the additional strains it has put on the global economy. The previous speakers also referred to it. If I now return to the topic of migration and search and rescue activities, I think it's crucial that commercial shipping is not the default option for search and rescue activities. Of course, shipping will continue to rescue people at distress at sea. It's a moral obligation. There are also legal obligations. You will be aware of that. And we will continue to do so. However, it is important to once again reiterate that rescue operations carried out by commercial shipping should not become the default solution. The responsibility to assist people in distress and coordinate search and rescue activities remains with governments. In this context, EXA, together with the trade union ETF, is engaging closely with the European Commission and the EU member states to ensure prompt and predictable disembarkation of rescued people in distress in a place of safety. And the words prompt and predictable are key. It's crucial that a ship that rescued people have the guarantee that they can disembark them quickly and also predictably. Commercial ships are not equipped for large-scale rescue operations, nor to safely host people on board for extended periods of time. And I think it's also crucial to realize that the crew is also not trained for such situations, and we should not underestimate the impact of the mental well-being of the crew involved in large-scale search and rescue activities. You see here on this slide a picture of the Erasmusgracht. That's a Dutch-flagged vessel, a relatively small vessel that picked up almost 400 migrants some years ago. Fortunately, this vessel was able to disembark those 400 people within 2 days. So that was a very good development there. But we recently had the case, of course, and now turning to the next slide, with the Maersk Etienne. That's the picture below. You will be aware of that case a couple of weeks ago. The Maersk tanker rescued 27 migrants, but they stayed on board for 38 days. And that was, of course, a very difficult situation, not only for the people that were rescued, but also for the crew, of course. So safe and secure shipping operations in the Mediterranean Sea are a vital part for the regional blue economy and can be a stabilizing force. And I think it's important to say that what happens to the Maersk tanker, it should not happen again. I'll come back to that. So to resume, as I mentioned, safe and secure shipping services are vital. However, the geopolitical and economic situation in the region remains problematic, and it's a strong push factor for people to make the journey towards Europe. And of course, this is likely to be exacerbated by the impact of COVID-19 on local economies. As I mentioned, EXA is already working closely with European institutions to make sure the industry's concerns are heard at the highest political level. But what can we do more? together. I think it's important that we work very closely together. Later today, a working group will discuss the possibilities to create situational awareness between actors. Ways to achieve this is to establish practical cooperation and information coordination. And the idea will be discussed to create a Center for Maritime Security. My first reaction to this is that sharing intelligence between all actors can be very effective and should be further explored how this could contribute to improve the situation in the Med. We know from other EU operations, for example, EU Operation Atalanta, combating piracy in the Gulf of Aden and the Somalian waters, that sharing intelligence is a key factor for a successful operation. But also another key condition is that effective follow-up can be given if the information shows that this has to be done. And this, of course, requires sufficient capacity of Navy vessels or other dedicated vessels under control of governments or the EU. Enough scale and flexibility is needed for a successful operation. And one last remark, the Commission in its recent announcements mentions the idea of setting up a European contact group on search and rescue. We very much support it, of course. And the aims of this group are to stimulate information exchange and cooperation between European member states, as well as identifying good practices. I have to say that we as European shipping industry, we would have liked a better text in the Pact on Migration on the position of merchant vessels. The text in the Pact on Migration only refers to NGO vessels, and we are talking to the Commission about better guidance from the Commission towards European member states about the position of merchant vessels. And we are, of course, also willing to contribute to the initiatives mentioned by the Commission in the recent communication. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dosman. I think in such a short time, you have touched upon quite a number of aspects of the topic we are focusing. I would now like to inform you that unfortunately we seem to miss Rita Del Prete, so we will not have a specific slot for focusing media and information as we would have wished. But the silver lining to this cloud is that this allows much more time for question and answers. So I pray our speakers to stay on, and at the same time I invite those following to put forward their questions while the last of our current 4 speakers will take the floor now. It is Mr. Luca Sisto of the Italian Shipping Association. He himself has been involved for the whole of his professional life in issue pertaining to merchant shipping. So it will now provide us with a snapshot right at the heart of the Mediterranean, as the Italian shipping community is certainly in this peculiar position. So, Mr. Sisto, it's a pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first, let me express a special thanks for giving Confitarma the opportunity to speak about the role of the Italian merchant fleet in the Mediterranean Sea. I'm honored to represent the Italian maritime industry during this international conference, which is an important opportunity to discuss the most challenging development for the future of our common maritime domain. I also wish to apologize in advance for the fact that I will not be able to stay for the rest of the discussion due to unforeseen institutional commitment. But, Mr. Chairman, of course, I will be happy to answer any questions, also by mail. Let me start with the title of this interesting panel. The development of the blue economy of the Mediterranean is an estimable possibility to solve many of the challenges and to improve the livelihood of the Mediterranean communities. Well, the Italian ship owners are firmly convinced of this. In fact, behind every shipping line, there is not only the development of the economy, but also the development of a dialogue. And the dialogue and the exchange of ideas and knowledge can only boost the improvement of the socio-economic conditions of the Mediterranean communities. In this respect, the cooperation and sharing of information between military and civilian stakeholders in order to increase the level of maritime security awareness is the key to ensure the freedom of the seas and the free flow of maritime traffic. This is particularly true when it comes to this difficult period of global pandemic that we are all experiencing. The global pandemic has indeed once again demonstrated that shipping is the lifeblood of the global economy. As you all know, about 90% of world trade is carried by sea, and the ship is the first vital link in the supply chain. Therefore, without shipping, intercontinental trade, the bulk transport of raw materials, the import, export of affordable food and medical goods would simply not be possible. As far as the Italian shipping industry is concerned, the first half of 2020, the one characterized by the lockdown, saw an average contraction of minus 12% in terms of tonnage of goods transit by Italian ports, with data ranging from minus 9% of rural traffic to minus 23% of solid bulk. However, the shipping industry has never stopped. Indeed, since the outbreak of the pandemic, the Italian government has expressly confirmed that maritime transport is an essential service for the country. I cannot avoid mentioning that COVID-19 pandemic has also had considerable impacts on seafarers. They played a key role during the whole duration of the emergency, keeping the global supply chain moving. However, travel restrictions imposed by some governments around the world have created major problems to crew changes and the repatriation of seafarers, leading to a growing humanitarian crisis. Coming back to the main topic of the panel, we must always bear in mind that the Mediterranean is the sea where our country has a geopolitical condition of national interest and where our fleet and our shipping industry generate our economy. The Mediterranean represents only 1% of the global ocean surface, but as we all know, accounts for 20% of the maritime traffic. In Italy, 57% of imports and more or less 45% of exports are carried by sea. That is why making the Mare Nostrum safe, secure, but also more competitive is essential to protect our national interest. Indeed, maritime security and blue economy are strictly connected. For years now, Confitarma has been following carefully the issues related to maritime security, from the adoption of the ISPS code to the new rise of maritime piracy, from the migration crisis in the Mediterranean to the cybersecurity threat. In this regard, it is important to remember that return of maritime piracy, a trend which for years now has represented a serious risk to the global maritime trade. The partnership between institution and industry regarding the measures to counter maritime piracy in the Indian Ocean was a success. But piracy still remains a threat in this area. On the contrary, in West Africa, the situation is even more critical. This is an area with a strategic role for the Italian energy policy, and in which our shipping industry has important commercial interest. So far, it seems that the impact of COVID-19 has been very limited when it comes to security risks in the maritime environment. But the economic impact of containment measures could further increase poverty rates and income inequalities in these areas, triggering violence and disorder. In this respect, we must always bear in mind that an unsafe sea could affect the development of our communities and economic systems. In this regard, on behalf of the Italian shipping industry, let me thank the Italian Navy. Without our Navy, our crews and our vessels would be exposed to serious risks with a tremendous impact on our country. Since the main goal of these important meetings is to improve common maritime situational awareness, allow me once again to bring to your attention an important issue that involves the Italian ship owners and on which Confitarma urgently needs clarity. As you all know, during the last years, the shipping industry has been faced with complex challenges associated with SAR operations in the central Mediterranean. And the spread of the pandemic in the region has made the situation even more difficult. In this regard, an area of particular concern for the Italian shipping industry is Libya. As is well known, the Italian shipping industry has never pulled back and will continue to honor the duty to rescue human life at sea. However, as Martin said before me, need for clarity on the application of the some lines conflicting international and national regulations on this delicate subject. We are aware of the complexity of the migration crisis in the Mediterranean scenario, but the recent cases of involvement of commercial vessels in search and rescue operations created great concern. Firstly, because crews of commercial vessels do not have the necessary equipment on board, and they are not trained to carry out this kind of operations. Secondly, we were witnessing once again the exclusion of the Italian flag from some international tenders in the Mediterranean. For these reasons, in February 2019, Confitarma submitted some questions to the Italian administration to receive operational guidelines for our masters when called to intervene in SAR operations. But as of now, we have not received any feedback yet. The shipping industry will continue to cooperate with all the institutions involved in order to build a common path that could ensure the safety and security of shipping, thus letting Italy to pursue its maritime interests. As I said before, maritime security and blue economy are strictly connected. Indeed, let me underline that maritime security is essential to supporting the blue economy and therefore for a sustainable development. And this is a very important issue for the Italian shipping industry. Our fleet is young. Almost 50% is less than 10 years old and technologically advanced. The Italian ship owners heavily invest in the environmental sustainability and safety of their fleet. For years now, despite the massive increase in global maritime trade, there has been a strong reduction in marine pollution by ships. The Italian ship owners are strongly committed to global initiatives for a substantial reduction of CO2 emissions. We have also started to use energy sources with zero emissions. Exactly 10 days ago, the first example of a new series of hybrid ro-ro vessels, which will use fossil fuel during navigation and electricity while in port, entered into service in the Mediterranean, as you can see in this picture. Indeed, from 1st January 2020, the International Maritime Organization has enforced a new 0.5% global sulfur cap on fuel content, lowering the current limit by 7 times. To comply with this new regulation, many ship owners installed scrubbers. The other alternative is using LNG-powered vessels. About that, at the end of 2018, one of our member companies put into service the first LNG ferry in the Mediterranean. Also, in the cruise sector, some LNG-powered ships are already operating. Unfortunately, not now because of the pandemic, and more of them are being built. But sadly, due to the lack of regulation, it is not yet possible to refuel LNG in Italian ports. Unbelievable. Anyway, these are amazing environmental performances. I don't want to take up any more of your time because I have already spoken perhaps too much. Let me conclude by saying that the feeling is that nothing will be as it was before the pandemic. But shipping is and will remain a vital global link for the development of the sustainable international trade. For these reasons, we firmly believe that navies and merchant marines should move forward together to improve mutual understanding and collaboration at sea. Only in this way we will be able to overcome the current crisis and to ensure the full development of the blue economy in the Mediterranean Sea to the benefit of all the communities that surround it. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sisto. I will now, rather than giving the floor to Mrs. Rita Del Prete, who seems to have an unsurmountable connection problem that we cannot unfortunately solve. So as I said before, it seems that we will sorely miss her in this debate, also because she was to bring another angle through the issues of media and freedom of expression and the press. But I'm getting enough questions to make this debate even more interesting. So I will start by abusing of the patience of Ambassador Sannino. I put in two different questions that have come through our means, but I would also invite the others to raise their hands in case they want to add interesting remarks to what Ambassador Sannino will say about these two questions. And the two questions are, I would say, rather falling within the diplomatic world, as the first says, the European Union divisions seems to prevent it to effectively fill the vacuum resulting from the refocusing of the United States elsewhere. And the recent closer joining of the Mediterranean, Middle East regions to the Horn of Africa and the Gulf have brought new actors to bear upon Mediterranean issues as we are noticeably witnessing in Libya. How would you assess such changes in terms of making Mediterranean issues actually less likely to be effectively solved? The other question, if you allow me to go on, in the first panel, it was argued that Europe cannot go it alone in the Mediterranean. Enhancing security and stability is a matter for international cooperation. Should other organizations, such as the African Union, begin to take on greater responsibilities in the management of international issues along the North African shores, can this improve international cooperation and strengthen the legitimacy of UN initiatives such as arms embargoes and sanctions? So these are two questions. Ambassador Sannino, now the floor is yours, but I will ask also Admiral Caffio, Mr. Dosman, and Mr. Sisto to think if they have valuable contribution to add up. Ambassador Sannino, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, on the first one concerning the divisions and the vacuum created by the US. I mean, there is certainly one thing that we need to say, and which we need to be aware of, that in the new world, in this world that we have started to know already since a few years, but I think even in the future, more and more the European Union is called to take up a number of responsibilities, especially in the neighborhood of the European Union. I mean, regardless what may happen with new US administration, certainly the picture in the Mediterranean has become much more complex. A number of actors that used to be there, but up to a point have become much more present. I'm thinking about Turkey, but I'm thinking also about Russia. Again, the United States may be less present. We'll see in the future, but in any case, we have to, we cannot count on a sort of role of policeman of the US in the world as we have done for many years. So in this kind of context, there is no doubt that the European Union needs to take more responsibility for the security of the region. So because in a way, the impact of the insecurity and instability has an immediate consequences also for our continent. divisions among the EU, I don't know. I know, yes. I mean, there are certainly, let's say, different sensitivities, which have, say, maybe sometimes had an impact on the effectiveness of our action. But I would say even more so is the what the High Representative used to call it the need to speak the language of power. That is to say, the willingness to intervene, to let's say, take actions, take initiatives, provide for security. The case of Irini, in a way, it's a very interesting case because I mean, we all, and I think that also the presentation has made clear about the importance of Irini and the importance of this mission. At the same time, it is true that Irini is going through a constant difficulty of being properly manned, properly equipped, and this is part of that lack of willingness to use the language of power that I was referring to. So we need collectively to take more responsibility from that point of view, and also to be able then to deploy the capabilities which are necessary to shoulder these responsibilities. And I think that if we do so, we can certainly have, let's say, the instruments at our disposal. I was mentioning in my introductory remarks also what we do in terms of financial assistance, the Southern Neighborhood, our, let's say, political presence on the ground. And so, in principle, we have the instruments, but we need to put them into coherence whole and being able to have a greater impact on the ground. But again, more than divisions, I would speak about willingness and determination to use the instruments that we have at our disposal. And maybe as a link also to the second question, we can do so much more also with the African Union. There is no doubt about that. Well, I would like to mention, first of all, that even the Mediterranean, there is also another international organization which is very present and is doing many things, which is NATO, and there is also then there are the United Nations. So it's from that point of view, there are a number of important actors that are playing on the ground. But it is true that the African Union is an important partner, and more it can play this role. It's interesting that the recent evolution of the African Union, including all the countries of the African continent, has now given really a continental, excuse the two words, but has given a continental impact to the Union. And definitely, we are working very closely with the African Union in many areas. The last one on which the work is still ongoing is on the crisis which has erupted in Ethiopia and in Tigray, where essentially we are supporting very much the efforts that are being deployed by the African Union and by the other regional organizations. So it's yes, I think that it is important to have partnerships. It is important to partner with the EU, but it is also important to keep on working with the other organizations. And but this cannot avoid the responsibility that the European Union has to take for a region which is very close to us, and it is having a very substantial impact on our life, on our economies, on our societies, on our security. From all points of view, it is of key importance, and we need to be able to use all the instruments that we have at our disposal.
Thank you very much for such an extensive reply. I would indeed now ask if Admiral Caffio, Mr. Dosman, or Mr. Sisto want to add anything to such a reply.
Okay, many thanks, Chairman. As a matter of fact, the European Union is not a superpower. So the value of the European Union are those one is established in the UN Charter. And I think that the European maritime strategy expresses very well this approach of the European Union based on peace, stability, and a dialogue among all the riparian states of the Mediterranean. Considering also that the Mediterranean Sea is a semi-enclosed sea, and under the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, Article 133, all the bordering states of the semi-enclosed sea have to cooperate each other in order to exercise their rights. This means that all the Mediterranean countries have to enter in negotiation, as I already said, to solve their maritime dispute. And concerning the fight against illicit traffic, I think that EUNAVFOR Med Irini expressed very well this international value established in of the peace and stability expressed by UN chart. You have to consider that naval embargo is a measure to established by Article 42 of the UN Charter in order to restore the peace and stability of the world in cases in which there are violations or in cases in which there is the need to fight illicit traffic. So concerning the embargo of the coast of Libya, we have to consider that there is not a single violator. There is not a country like former Yugoslavia or Iraq. You remember what happened in the last century in 1992 or before. So the task of Irini is to fight all the illicit traffic. So there is not a single violator. Another aspect of Irini, I think, is the equality of all countries at the sea. So the intervening state have to respect the flag state, but as I already said, flag states have to cooperate with the intervening states under the UN Charter. So I think that the value of Irini, the importance of Irini, is to be based on this soft power that applying the UN Charter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Sister, Mr. Dosman, would you like to venture into the waters of international politics and diplomacy to add your remarks, or shall we proceed with further questions? I see Ambassador Sanino has actually a raised hand, so if you don't mind, I will happily give him the floor. Thank you.
No, I just because I don't know if I got it right, but while I shared the analysis that has been made on Irini, I beg to disagree with the fact that European Union is not a superpower. I mean, it's we are a different kind of superpower, but I mean, certainly we have been for quite some time a superpower in terms of norm setting and in creating regulatory frameworks that have been, let's say, then established all over the world. Now, what we need to do, that's why I was insisting on the point of using all the instruments at our disposal, is that we need to go beyond this in this new world, in this new polarized world, where the multilateralism is being questioned so substantially. We need to be able to navigate rough seas, and unfortunately, the instruments that we have used up until now are, in a way, needs to be supplemented with other instruments. But that's, I mean, I think that we, if I look at the world, I would say that the European Union is definitely a superpower.
although nowadays we speak of hyperpowers, indeed. Thank you very much for that. So now I will take the panel a little bit deeper into international maritime law, because we seem to have very specific questions that I would venture to put through to Admiral Caffio because of his specific expertise in international maritime law. And the two questions are, first, did the EU take the SUA 988 and annexed 2005 protocol as a legal basis for the Operation Irini, in addition to relevant UN Security Council resolutions? Since these are very technical questions, I'll put them one at a time. So, Admiral Caffio, we would be pleased to hear your very learned reply to that.
I have to read again the text of the last resolution 2092. The member states have to make good faith efforts to first obtain the consent of the vessel flag state prior to any inspection pursuant to this paragraph, and calls upon all flag states to above-mentioned vessel to cooperate with such inspections. So by one side, there is the obligation to act in good faith from the intervening states. By other sides, there is the duty to cooperate with the intervening state. We have to remember that other naval embargo, and before I remember the 1991 against Iraq and the 1992 against former Yugoslavia, where they were a coercive embargo, erga omnes. What means erga omnes? So in that cases was not established that the flag state have to give consents to the intervening state. So the United Nations Security Council authorized in that case all necessary means in order to inspect the vessels suspected to be engaged in violation of a UN embargo. So in these occasions concerning the embargo, the arms embargo, the arms smugglings off the coast of Libya, there is something different. Since China and Russia, when were approved these resolutions, requests to establish the principle of consent. But the principle of consent can be applied with some difficulty in an operational context at sea, where we need immediate decisions, where in case in which there is the suspect of a violation of arms smuggling. So we have to consider the other obligation to cooperate with the intervening states, since all the member states of the United Nations have to respect the UN Charter. And the UN Charter establishes both the power of intervening states and both the obligation of other flag states to facilitate the task of intervening states. So even though in these cases there is the principle of consent, we have to consider that in some way nothing changed, since the flag states are obliged to give the consent. To say the truth, we can imagine in the future that a different modus operandi can be established, which means this, that the flag states can give a certificate to their ships, to their flag ship, assuming the responsibility to certificate that the vessel doesn't transport any prohibited good, but is as was established during the Second World War, based on the London Declaration, and this was the Navy cert. So was a certificate of the flag state that the flag state give before coming at the sea. So everything can be established in the future, but at the moment, I think that the pillar are two. So the right of intervening state in good faith to control, to inspect the suspected vessel, and I insist in the term suspected, since otherwise every ships can be blocked and inspected. So there is a need to be the suspicion to be suspected, and otherwise there is the obligation to cooperate. That is the pillar of international law, based both on the UN Charter and on the United Nations Conventions of the Law of the Sea.
Very clear. I'm afraid I have another one to shoot at you. So please be patient, because this is just as technical as the first one. And the questions ask, the Memorandum of Understanding between Turkey and the Libyan GNA and the Libyan decision to extend its territorial waters up to 70 miles have revealed a discrepancy between the international law to manage their own borders and to strike bilateral deals with other partner countries. How can the international community reconcile such two elements? The floor is yours again, Admiral.
So you refer to agreement between Tripoli and Ankara of last year, December 2019. So what I can say? Each state has the right to establish their maritime zones, but other states have the right not to recognize these claims. So I think that the principle is this: each state can establish its zone, but other states have to protest in case in which there are different rights. And they have to solve the dispute or by negotiation or requesting an international court, an international tribunal. No other ways exist to solve a dispute. So the use of force or the threats of use of force is prohibited by the UN Charter. And so I think that the approach of the European Union is exactly this. The two countries have the country have to solve their dispute with each other. We have to consider also that the European Union is not competence in the field of maritime boundary dispute, since this is an attribution of each state. And correctly, the European Union invites the interested states to solve the question, the dispute, entering in negotiation or requesting a tribunal. So I think there are no other questions. We have to consider also the issue of the United Nations, where the text of the agreement was published. But this does not mean that the agreement is legal. This means that all the countries have to know that exists this agreement, and that protects against have to request the International Court of Justice or the ITLOS or other tribunal to solve the dispute.
Admiral, thank you so much, because your technical answers, in fact, boil down to a very wise appeal to cooperate in order to find solutions, effective and sustainable solutions. So thank you so much for this reply. Now, I have two final questions, one for Mr. Dosman. And this question says, the One Belt, One Road plan projects China as a newly proactive actor and competitor for the European Shipping Association. How do you see these complex international development evolving in the Mediterranean Sea? Please, Mr. Dosman.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. That's indeed a very relevant question. I think we all know that China has a geopolitical agenda, and shipping is a very important part of that. I think we realize that China wants to control more or less the full supply chain. So not only shipping, but also shipbuilding, also terminal operations. So that's really a geopolitical challenge for Europe. And I think that Europe was perhaps a little bit too naive for quite some years about the intentions of China, but that has changed, I think, remarkably over the last couple of years. And Europe is now looking in a different way at China. And for example, if I translate the question to very concrete topics that are now on the agenda of the European Commission, for example, the whole taxonomy project that is about defining activities that can be considered as green, and only green activities can be funded by the EU, or can be funded by banks established in the EU. We have to be very careful. And we are now in close dialogue with the Commission. What about shipping services? When to be considered to be green? And if we don't do that carefully, the consequence will be that European ship owners will have no access to finance in Europe. And the only alternative, and we already see it happening, is that they move to China. So that's even a bigger part of the fleet, and also the fleet controlled by European ship owners is owned by Chinese interest. And we have to be careful as Europe about let me say, the intentions of China, and we have to find answers to that. And I think it's crucial that Europe remains competitive for ship owners, but also remains an attractive location for ship finance activities, that European banks have the possibility to provide finance to European ship owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dosman. Thank you very much indeed. And now, last but not least, while if Mr. Sisto is still with us, which I hope he is, I would indeed ask him if he has any further comment to the question for Mr. Dosman, because it concerns the Italian Shipping Association as much as the European one. But I have a specific one for Mr. Sisto. That is, the COVID pandemic affected tourism and transport on all Mediterranean shores. How deep are the consequences, and for how long do you think the effects of this crisis will bite and produce unwelcome phenomena? Mr. Sisto, are you still there with us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I try to give you a short answer to this important question. Well, are suffering a very, very intensive lockdown for cruise sector. We have at the moment more or less 27 cruise ships stopped in our ports and in some ports in other parts of the world. It's very dangerous for the Italian tourism, for the Italian economy, but not only for Italian tourism and for Italian economy. We are suffering to a new model of crisis for bulk and liquid bulk sector. And so we are very, very worried about it. We are asking to our government a sort of support for our shipping industry. And we are confident that the new measures provided at the EU level, like, for example, Recovery Fund, could be in the next future support our industry. So your question is very, very important for us. I hope to have given you a quiet answer.
You did indeed, Mr. Sisto. Thank you very much. And I think notwithstanding the extra time that we earned by the technical problems that has prevented Mrs. De Prete to be with us, we have exceeded our time and in an extremely interesting manner. So it is my pleasure to profusely thank each one of the speaker for their patience and availability, and I would happily pass on the magic wand back to the chairing board to continue the proceedings of Shade Mag. Thank you very much all, and thank you also to our public.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ministro. Hi, Martin. Hi, Fabio.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Voila.
Thank you, Minister Dejak, and thank you very much to all our speakers. Moving on with our distinguished guests, we'll now listen to a video message from Ms. Stephanie Turco-Williams, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Libya. She was appointed Special Representative for Political Affairs in Libya, United Nations Support Mission in Libya, on the 2nd of July 2018 by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Ms. Williams brings more than 24 years of experience in government and international affairs, including as Deputy Chief of Mission at the United States missions in Iraq from 2016 to 2017, Jordan 2013 to 2015, and Bahrain from 2010 to 2013, where she led the embassy as Chargé d'Affaires for 10 months. With Ms. Williams' busy schedule and commitments regarding the peace process, she has managed to find the time to send us the following video message.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be able to join this ShadeMed seminar on shared awareness and deconfliction in the Mediterranean. UNSMIL has made substantial progress in the search for peace and stability in Libya, in particular during the past few months. A ceasefire agreement was signed in Geneva on the 23rd of October and started immediately to come into effect. As the truce on the ground continued to hold, the ceasefire consolidated many confidence-building measures that had had a real impact on the ground, and it responds to the Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire. team also joined the 5+5 in Sirte between the 10th to the 13th of November. Key outcomes of both meetings included a plan to reopen the coastal road from Misrata to Sirte, moves to deploy a establishment of the JMC headquarters in the Ouagadougou Conference Center in Sirte, and the operationalization of the subcommittees under the umbrella of the 5+5, continuing the exchange of detainees and the full resumption of oil production and domestic flights throughout the country. On the 16th of October, I joined a meeting with the chairman of the National Oil Corporation and the Eastern and Western commanders of the Petroleum Facilities Guard, the PFG, in Brega, the birthplace of oil in Libya, to discuss the unification and restructuring of this protection force. Commanders of the PFG presented their proposal for a new force structure, and I urged them to capitalize on the current momentum while adopting an incremental approach. On the 9th of November, I convened the first in-person session of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum in Tunis on the basis of the Berlin Conference conclusions endorsed by UN Security Council Resolution 2510. The dialogue concluded on the 15th of November with participants adopting a political roadmap to presidential and parliamentary elections to be held on the 24th of December 2021, including the establishment of a legal committee to agree on constitutional arrangements for the interim phase. The Libyans have achieved many positive steps on all fronts of the intra-Libyan tracks, political, military, and economic. But the situation in Libya remains extremely fragile and volatile. There is no time for complacency, and limiting external negative interference in Libya through material, financial, or political support to spoilers is a key element of the political course that members charted in Berlin. This is the reason why, during my last Security Council briefing, I appealed to all stakeholders, including to those who provide security on the ground, to engage in fostering an environment of trust so that all strata of the society, specifically women, youth, and internally displaced persons, can fully exercise their franchise in the upcoming elections. While the Joint Military Commission seeks to operationalize the ceasefire agreement, the two sides have not yet begun to withdraw their forces. The Government of National Accord and the Libyan Arab Armed Forces remain stationed at their positions. In addition, after the ceasefire agreement was signed, military cargo flights were monitored and auxiliaries continued to set up fortifications and military outposts equipped with air defense systems between Sirte and El Jufra. I have urged the Security Council to support this historic momentum by ensuring enforcement of relevant resolutions pertaining to the arms embargo. Violations of the arms embargo must stop to prevent spoilers or any foreign interference from jeopardizing the efforts made by Libyan parties to reach and to hold the ceasefire. Operation Irene continues to play a critical role in the sensitive phase of Libya's history, implementing Security Council mandate and monitoring violations of the arms embargo. The efforts of Irene will definitely reinforce UNSMIL's own efforts to facilitate a return to legitimacy and national sovereignty through a political solution. This year, more than 11,000 migrants and refugees trying to reach Europe have been intercepted at sea and returned to Libya, which is by all definitions not a safe port for return. The numbers already far surpass the total for 2019. Hundreds have paid the ultimate price, with more than 900 migrants and refugees drowning or presumed drowned in the Mediterranean in 2020. On the 12th of November, 3 deadly shipwrecks recorded in one day claimed over 100 lives. Migrants and refugees remaining in Libya have faced an upsurge in grave protection risks and violations of their human rights. As of the 8th of November, more than 2,000 migrants and refugees are in official detention centers in Libya. Shade Med's mandate to deconflict and, where possible, coordinate military and civilian resources, military and civilian operations and industry remains critical to saving thousands of lives and disrupting the network of human trafficking that is the key revenue for illegal armed groups and criminal organizations operating in Western Libya. The number of COVID-19 cases and deaths in Libya continues to increase month on month. The first 2 weeks of November saw a 22% increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, with Libya's biggest cities, Tripoli, Benghazi, and Misrata, witnessing the largest increases. With limited testing capacity and poor mortality surveillance, the numbers are a fraction of what health experts suspect to be the true scale of the problem. Despite all this, I remain optimistic about the way forward in Libya, yet clear-eyed about the many challenges that lie ahead. 10 years of war cannot be solved in 1 week of political talks, but we hear more now the language of peace rather than the language of war. I've witnessed in the past several months the potential for a paradigm shift in how Libyan military, political, and economic leaders view their role in charting the country's path forward, from one of a transactional power-sharing arrangement in which the riches are divvied up amongst the privileged few, to one of sharing responsibility in order to save the country from further conflict. Only shared responsibility, nurtured by patriotism and love of country, can lead to the shared security and prosperity for which so many Libyans yearn. Libyans deserve the support, but not the interference by the many international actors as they seek to forge a sovereign political future. Thank you.
Many thanks to Ms. Stephanie Thurko-Williams. We have followed 2 extremely interesting panels crowned by distinguished speakers' intervention. A lot of information and points worth thinking about. Our conference proceeds now with 3 simultaneous technical working groups. Let me recap their titles. Working Group 1, Observatory on Illicit Activities. 2, Shipping Industry Coordination, Building a More Integrated Approach. 3, Capacity Building of Libyan Coast Guard and Navy. Attendees who applied to participate will join the relevant chat room as established during the preliminary sessions we had on the 17th and the 24th of November. The working group sessions will be directed by each working group leader. The working group's outcomes will be presented in plenary session tomorrow at 15:20 hours. For the media representatives, a media opportunity window with Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini is open today from 1700 hours to 1800 hours. For those not taking part in the working groups or media opportunity, today's conference finishes here. Thank you all for your inputs, aspects and ideas. We will resume tomorrow at 1100 in plenary session. Good evening.